when I first started grad school, I entered into that space saying that my parents' divorce didn't affect me at all. And so in some ways, I think like we became such good friends. It's like, I see myself in you. I know this person. I too had existed in life for a really long time, believing or convincing myself that I was okay, that I had a pretty good childhood and there really wasn't anything from the past that was affecting me. And what I learned was that actually making space to be affected would then require me to feel. And feeling felt really scary to me. Yet I had for a long time been someone who presented as I'm fine, everything is okay, everything is good, I'm unaffected by everything, nothing bothers me at all. That's the woman that I had presented as for a really long time. And when I started to come into contact with the idea that like, ooh, maybe my parents' divorce did affect me. Right? There was such a big confrontation there for me because it would require me to get pretty intimate with my emotions, my feelings, and how hard it actually was. And I had really structured and organized my life around pretending like it wasn't. That brings us back to when I was a tiny little human in this world. My parents got separated when I was in first grade. They went through a 9-year divorce process on top of the separation process. People by now, I think, know it was the longest in the state of New Jersey at the time. And I watched a tremendous amount of conflict, a lot of psychological abuse, a lot of manipulation, gaslighting, paranoia, emotional flooding. Just, it was wild, really, really wild. Police were around a lot. It was just, there was a lot of intensity during those years. And I had taken on this role. I'm an only child. I always share that. I think it's important to know that I didn't have any other little humans around me at that time. I was in this experience really on my own. No one to be like, oh my gosh, did you see what they, like, can you believe what they did? Like, there was no space to really talk about and validate and really co-witness what was going on. And neither of my parents repartnered or remarried either. And so I also didn't have any other adults in this space who could be a grounding, calming force for me. So as a child, I always say my parents were, it was crashing and burning. The system was crashing and burning. The system I called my family was crashing and burning around me. And, I think they did everything they could to protect me as much from it as possible, but I still heard it, saw it, felt it, experienced it, witnessed it, and it did a number. I became a kid who tried to fly under the radar. I really wanted to make sure that I didn't add to the crashing and burning. I thought that it would be the thing that broke the camel's back. The camel's back was certainly already broken, but I was like, I cannot add more to this. And so I learned how to operate under the radar. I learned to present as if I was totally fine, super well adjusted. I was really good at acting the part. Even to this day, they could sometimes be like, but you were such a well-adjusted child. And I'm like, I know, I did a really good job convincing you guys of this. Yeah, I was a really great actress. And so, I became this needless little girl. My core needs were absolutely met, certainly, but my emotional needs were not. And I got good at anything I put my mind to. That was a really easy kind of coping strategy for me. And it was also my contribution to trying to help the system get by, right? If I don't add any more stress to this already crashing and burning system around me, then I'm doing my part, right? Then I'm helping out in some way. But in that, I really got erased. In that I was not seen, in that I had zero needs of my own that I could express, or probably more important to say it this way, they were not able to be attuned to what I was actually experiencing or needing at that time. It wasn't my responsibility to bring that forward. Fast forward, and you're a big part of this story, but fast forward, I'm an adult. I'm an adult, a needless woman who continues to pretend like everything is fine. I'm unaffected by things. I have zero boundaries. I'm cool, down for whatever, right? I presented as the sort of the cool girl persona. And there was a moment in in an adult romantic relationship where someone I was dating, someone I thought was, I could see a future with, his ex came back into the picture, and we were together at the time, and he was considering going back into this relationship, and I made space for him. I was like, of course, I understand. This must be so hard. Just fully focusing on just. I think being a therapist doesn't help with this, right? Where you're like,
Right.
I get I know that there's a story here, of course, there's layers, it's multifaceted, but I was putting any of my feelings, any of my boundaries aside, any of my needs, they were all so far off in the distance. And I remember having a conversation with you. I don't know if you remember this, and it clicked in, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I am literally in the same role that I was as a little girl." And listen, this happened years into being a marriage and family therapist and my training and all of that. But I remember this like shocking moment, and this is true. I think anybody listening totally gets this, that like sometimes the simplest of things are truly the most profound moments in our lives,
So
right?
true.
Where you look back and you're like, how did I not know this? How did I not see this? How is that so hidden to me for so many years? Right? It's like, I've been there, I get it. And we have to be gentle with ourselves in this exploration, because when it clicks in, wow, do things change? And yeah, I remember having that conversation with you and just being like, oh man, this is what I've been doing my entire life. And I called him afterwards, and my heart was racing and my palms were sweating and I was so nervous. And this is the first time I was ending a relationship with someone. That's not so surprising, because it's really hard to end relationships when you're telling people you're fine all the time. They'd be like, well, what's the problem? But this was the first time I was ending a relationship, and I finally got to say, what's going on is actually not okay with me. I'm actually really affected by the fact that you're spending so much time with this person. It feels dishonorable to the relationship that we have. And there were other things said in there, but ultimately, like, I'm going to exit from this as you figure out what you want. And it was the last time that we spoke, and it was the first time that I had carved a new path for myself